Welcome to The Next Stop Is with me, Jane August. In case you've missed it, I have a little video series where I'm visiting every museum in New York City's 5 boroughs, and during that journey I've had the opportunity to meet many cool people in the museum world, and that's kind of why I started this podcast, was to talk to those people in longer form conversations. One of those people is today's guest, Karen Vidangos. Karen is the founder of the Latinx Art Collective, the first nationwide database exclusively for Latinx artists in the United States and Caribbean. I met Karen through her work as the social media manager at the Guggenheim Museum. Karen also has her own social media accounts, Latina in Museums, where she explores and elevates underrepresented perspectives in the arts. Welcome, Karen.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is super special.
So did you always want to work in museum and art?
I didn't always know that I wanted to be in museums, but I grew up in a creative atmosphere. My family has a musical background. My mom used to sing. My dad plays guitar. My sister plays piano. So I always knew that this creative atmosphere is what called to me.
And was it always visual arts or just art in general?
Just art in general. I had a general appreciation. I loved it. I just didn't know when I was younger that this was a career path I could take.
And how did you find it?
In my undergrad, I first went to the University of Maryland. In my undergrad year, I entered with a major in government and politics. And that's actually when I realized I can't possibly do that. And so I decided to switch to art, which shocked my family. A lot of disappointment because their biggest question, especially as immigrants to this country, was, how are you going to make money? I couldn't answer that question. Then soon after that, I realized I am not an artist. I love artists. I appreciate their genius and their creativity, but I myself am not an artist, so I switched over to art history. And there is where I truly started thinking through this whatever this is, might be where home is. And, little by little putting the pieces together of that being a museum.
Were there any artists that you really loved that kind of drew you into that space?
Yes, and I hate to admit it because of everything I try to do now as a Latina, but the first artist that truly captivated me was Jackson Pollock, which given him as an artist and as a person, just something I learned later on, obviously, that there are other artists that are well worthy of elevating.
But you're able to learn that and move forward.
Yes, exactly.
Art speaks for itself. How do you experience art in museums when you go to a museum or a gallery? Do you have a specific way now that you have an art brain?
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot from curators. There's so many different people that hold different positions in the museum field, and they see art in many different ways based on their expertise. And so I admire all of that and really look to learn from them to better inform myself. So I'm constantly learning. So for me, walking through museums, obviously what attracts me first in the first few seconds is the visual impact, and then trying to decode what that artist is trying to say or not say. And then I go straight to the label.
Once you chose art history, did you want to go the curatorial path, or did you know that social media marketing, that part was for you?
I was curious about curatorial. I was intrigued. It piqued my interest. But I did have a professor in my last year of undergrad pull me aside, and I appreciate her advice. And she said, there are two paths that you can go, and the first one is academic route, which could be professor, curatorial, and the second one is a little more public-facing. She says, over the past few years that I've gotten to know you, I can see you being successful in the academic route, but I don't think you would end up enjoying it. And she's absolutely right, because as we've seen with the many brilliant and successful curators, they go on to advanced degrees. And that's a lot of research, a lot of dedication. I just, where I'm at is where I'm the happiest.
And I know you went to grad school, you got a master's in museum studies. Mm-hmm. Did you go to that right after undergrad, or did you take time to feel around?
I took time. Well, okay, so it's a very complicated path. I do like to talk about it because it's very much part of my journey that I want to share with other Black and Brown communities who are looking at the arts and to get into the field and are wondering how is it too late, is it too complex, confusing, etc. I went into undergrad and I was there for about 3 years before the financial crisis of 2007, 2008 hit, and I had to drop out. So I ended up going to retail. I dropped out of college, and I was there for many years, 5-6 years, before I decided very hesitantly to get my master's degree. Right after my master's degree, I did jump right into the museum field, but it took me a very long, complicated time to get there.
For a museum studies degree, what does that consist of? Like how I'm so fascinated by that part because I have no museum world training, but I'm in that space.
Well, it's a generalized degree. I think it was perfect for myself who didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in museums, but I just wanted to be in museums. So they teach you every part of the museum sector, from a director role, fundraising, communications. But if you are focused on a niche like conservation or curatorial, a museum studies degree would definitely not be the right degree, but it was perfect for me.
Did you have any museums that you went to that you were like, I need to work here, or really inspired you to pursue the museum route?
The Hirshhorn.
Okay.
The Hirshhorn in D.C. If you live in D.C., you know the Smithsonian is such a big part of that city. Given that it's got such a strong political landscape, it's nice to have a space like the Smithsonian to bring all of these different museum interests, American history, Natural History Museum, the Hirshhorn. And so I spent a lot of time at the different museums under the Smithsonian, and it was really the Hirshhorn that I fell in love with. And then also the National Gallery of Art, where I spent a lot of time while I was getting my master's degree, and that was just such a sacred space for me.
I know you've told me before, but where did you grow up?
So I was born in Arlington, Virginia. I grew up in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and worked and went to school in D.C.
Okay, so because I know you did a lot of your work, your museum work, before the Guggenheim in D.C.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if that was your area or if you found your way there.
No, the DMV is what we call it.
So you did a lot of museum work in D.C. I know you jumped around a few times, right?
Yeah.
Where were you at?
I did retail. I was a retail manager in the store for the National Museum of Asian Art, the African Art Museum, the Hirshhorn Museum. And just for the opening, I worked at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in the store.
Cool. And then did you move to social media stuff while you were in D.C.?
Yes. So I did a lot of retail within museums and then a couple of internships while I was in grad school. And those internships were at the National Museum of Natural History and again at the Hirshhorn. But my first job out of grad school was at Glenstone Museum, where I was a communications specialist manager. I don't remember the title at this point, but I mostly did social media work.
Did you always think you were going to end up in New York, or was Guggenheim in New York just a surprise kind of?
I've always wanted to be in New York since I was young. Always wanted to be in New York. My direction, for some reason, always inevitably ended up with me at my home in the DMV. Again, my first job out of college, out of grad school, I applied everywhere, all over the country. And the job that I landed, Glenstone, is 10 minutes away from my family's home. So I was like, okay, clearly destiny does not want me to be in New York. But then COVID happened and, everyone's rethinking their life. And I realized that I can't just wait for the perfect moment. I have to just jump and hope that it works out.
How did the Guggenheim job come to you?
I literally was just up at 2 a.m. one night in my room, and I was just searching through job positions, and I saw that it was open. And I just applied, 2 a.m., just kind of applied, and I heard back within a few days.
Whoa.
Yeah, crazy. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah. I feel like everyone's, especially in the museum world, doesn't it take forever for anything to happen?
Yeah.
Because lots of times with nonprofit stuff, there's so much bureaucracy of hiring and...
Yeah. It was clearly meant to be.
Oh, yay. For the people who don't know what the Guggenheim is, by chance, do you want to give a brief rundown of what the museum is?
Sure. It is a modern and contemporary art museum in the Upper East Side. And there's the Guggenheim in New York, of course, but we also have the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, the Peggy Guggenheim Collection in Venice, and soon to be the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi.
Do they have you working on stuff for all of those or just New York?
My job is primarily in New York, but I do a lot of collaborations with the social media managers at the other institutions. And I'm just working with them to really strengthen our collaboration and kind of grow that.
That's really cool.
It's really fun.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
I didn't know there was other like Guggenheims. I knew there was like all the other like Frank Lloyd Wright
Yeah.
buildings and houses.
Yeah.
But that is cool. And then the building's just incredible.
Iconic. Classic.
Every time I'm just like, whoa, like how does this exist?
I know. I love it so much. I feel so lucky to just be in that space. And I mean, that alone, just New York alone is just so special to me. Being in that space is just an honor. And then being able to collaborate across our constellation is just a unique experience that I feel very lucky to have.
Do you have like a favorite space in the museum? Because I think it's like a really interesting building.
Yeah, I actually like being at the very top, at the very, very top, and just kind of looking down and just not even just seeing the spiral, but seeing the people. You can see them from all the different ramps and their curiosity and how they navigate. It's just, I like the people watching.
And with the Guggenheim, ideally, we start from the bottom and work our way up. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. But the way that Frank Lloyd Wright intended originally was to start up and work your way down.
When did they decide to change that? Or was it always their curatorial to do up?
You know, every exhibition is different. Every curatorial vision is different. You know, it's not a hard and fast rule. It was just sort of this idea and intention of the architect. And since the space is so unique and can be limiting, every curator has kind of had a different idea of how they want to show their work. And sort of that creativity, that diversity of how we see these exhibitions is what makes it really special.
Yeah. It's also like you're on a ramp the whole time you're like looking through the main thing.
Yeah.
And so you've been at the Guggenheim doing really fun social media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to museums, especially the large-scale institutions, I feel like it's like they're kind of stuffy. It's just what it is. How are you working to like modernize Guggenheim and its presence while also keeping that like long-term reputation?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, and that's always something that we all think about, you know, having that balance. And the museum as a whole, I think, is doing a really good job as striking at that balance and then just, you know, moving forward and being better and improving upon that. For social media, you know, for me, it's really talking about issues of our time. And a lot of that has to do with Black and brown artists, the kind of work that they do, the issues that they have tackled, and really amplifying those stories in a way that the museum and really all museums have historically not done. So that for me is what is very important to touch on.
And have you been getting feedback from just like regular like members about that? Are they realizing that change that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard from a few different people that they appreciate that. You know, I think that it's really important, and it's not going to be just one person to kind of create this inviting atmosphere. It's the work of all of us, you know, in education and public programs and curatorial. But I think that we've really worked together to achieve that. And still, you know, much to be done.
When they start a new exhibition or like open a new gallery, at what point do you start working on that, doing social media marketing?
So we start talking about it probably a year out, but my planning doesn't really begin, at least in a really rough draft form, until maybe 6 months out from the show. And then 3 months out is like really, I've learned a lot more about what the show entails, and so then really digging into the details and any concrete ideas that I might be able to propose, you know, working maybe with the artist if they're available, with the curators, with the conservators, and trying to piece that together and create a timeline.
Have there been times with, because I feel like with art, it's always so kind of like picky about like rights and videos and things. do they just give you free reign on things, or
No.
have you had roadblocks too?
No, you do not get free reign. I mean, that's part of the job of a social media manager anywhere, is really understanding, one, the landscape that you are working in, and then two, within the arts, is understanding the work itself, the complexity, the sensitivity. Just a random example. Say you have a work by Faith Ringgold and you want to make a meme about it or something. In my opinion, that would not be the right choice if you understand the context in which that work was created, if you understand the artist herself and why she made the work that she did. So it takes a lot of research and having that awareness of how you're placing this artwork in the context of this general social media landscape.
That's really interesting, especially for me, being like a content creator influencer. When you go into spaces and you figure like, okay, how's the right way for like me to present that information? And I feel like sometimes I'll see other influencers just like willy-nilly posting stuff.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on that, and how, like, I guess New York City influencers are using art as their landscape in a sense?
Yeah. There's a lot of opinion about that. I think that on the one hand, people digest art in however they feel comfortable. And I think if we talk about it more, post about it more, the better. The more people can see it. So you have that influencer who maybe uses an artwork as their backdrop and nothing more, but perhaps she has a follower that sees it and says, oh, that's really interesting. I want to learn more about who that artist is, right? On the other hand, it's, seeing that and saying with the assumption, oh, this influencer doesn't really appreciate that work. And I think all of these cases are true. But as someone that works in museums, there's really nothing you can do about it. You just let them do their thing and hope that you just give more people access to the work, to the art.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, more art, more accessibility.
Have there been any exhibitions that you've worked on or with that you've really loved or been surprised by?
I have loved all the exhibitions that I have worked on simply because I never in a million years thought that I would be here doing what I do. So I don't take for granted any of the shows. I don't think I have any favorites, honestly. I have appreciated them each for a different reason, and it's not just the show itself for me. Sometimes I get excited by people's reception to the show, and that like amplifies like my excitement around it. But I don't think I could pick a favorite show. I just, I constantly have to remind myself like, wow, it is rare to be in this position at the institutions that I've worked for. The field is so hard to get into. There's so many people that are so talented who don't get this opportunity. And so I just, every single show, every single thing that I do to contribute to an exhibition, to the museum, is, I don't want to say an honor, but it's I can't forget how special this moment is for me, that my career is.
I think you do a really good job at showcasing that on your own personal accounts. And I love seeing your comments that you have from so many people who want to work in the museum space or learn from you. Why did you start posting on your pages like that? Were you always was that always a plan, or were you just posting your life and then people found you?
I mean, so what had happened is, I'm learning more about the museum field in grad school. And I'm starting to piece together, what the museum field, the environment is really like. So, underrepresented, not accessible, lots of barriers to that field for Black and brown arts workers. And doing my own research from the people who have done the digging, the data, all of that. And I started just scrolling through my social media feed and realizing that a lot of the influencers who were talking about arts work were white. And so that kind of changed my perspective on the kind of content I wanted to do on my own social media. So yes, I want to show all the exciting things that I do, being invited to receptions or openings, because it's exciting for me. But I also want to show my community that this is something that's possible to do. And then on top of that, I talk a lot about, how hard it was for me. I really want to showcase and highlight other Latinas who are working in museums doing incredible work, and just, again, really show the community, my community, that this career path is possible.
I love seeing all your comments and the people who are so overjoyed by what you're doing. You always post when you're ever looking for an intern. I'm like, okay, I'll always repost that. We're going to get you someone good.
Yes, I appreciate that.
But I've seen also people mention how they feel like it's so hard to get into a museum.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you recommend that those people who are looking for that work get into that space?
Yeah, I actually get that question a lot. All the time in my DMs and my emails, I get it a lot. And it's a really hard question to answer because there's so many different ways you can get your foot in the door. And so all I have to give is the examples of how I did it. You got to take it with a grain of salt because, again, there are so many different ways you can get in. But I went to undergrad, did art history degree. I went to grad school and got a museum studies degree. And through my museum studies program, I got to really know more people, more professionals in the field and network. And that is kind of the underlying of what I tell everyone is you need to network. You need to go to every show that you can. You need to meet people, go to programs, go to talks, make genuine connections, but you need to put yourself out there.
And is there a way for us to fix that barrier of entry that's especially an issue towards people of color and Black and brown people? How do we get that that gate down?
How do we fix it?
Yeah, how do we fix it? What can I do? What can I do as a white person to help? I feel like I see that issue and I'm like, okay, I'm just a girl who goes to museums, but I'm generally how can I help? How can we fix this?
Yeah, well, I think there's little things that everyone can do. First of all, I think people like me, people in positions of power, can help amplify any opportunities that there are. So, for example, when I posted about the social media internship, I wanted to amplify that was available. My audience is primarily Black and brown people, so I'm hoping that reaches them. Resharing, reposting any opportunities from any arts programs, not necessarily geared towards Black and brown artists or art workers, but sometimes, we don't even see that these opportunities exist. Mm-hmm. So reposting it, resharing it on your stories so that it can be seen and viewed. And then also just sharing and amplifying the stories of Black and brown people in the arts who are doing great work, exposing them to a larger audience. Some of these are things that I've been doing or trying to do. And I think that, it takes a little bit from everyone to kind of do this and move us forward.
Yeah, okay. I can do that.
It's a big puzzle piece, but if we each take one piece, I'm hoping we could solve this together.
Are there any Black and brown artists that you really love that we can help amplify?
Yes, so many. Two artists in particular that I'm absolutely in love with right now is Yvette Mayorga. She's on Instagram, Yvette Mayorga, and Bonnie Ramirez. They have been doing incredible work and getting that recognition for it. They are rising stars, so definitely keep an eye out for them.
Okay, I'm going to check them out.
Yeah.
And I think you also definitely do a lot of this with the Latinx Art Collective. Would you mind telling me a bit about that?
Yes. So, the question that you asked me is exactly that, really trying to bring together all kinds of Latinx artists within the U.S. and Caribbean and put them in this database, essentially. There's different spaces that Black and brown artists simply can't enter into. Again, we're talking about these barriers to access. And so, when you talk about gallery representation, when you talk about collectors, dealers, Latinx artists are really not at the top of that list. And sometimes that excuse can be, where would I even find them? And so this was kind of that solution to that excuse, to say you can absolutely find them. Go right here, and you can find them by state, by the kind of work that they do, the medium. They're there. They're there. Just do a little search on this one website and you will find them.
How does this database work? Can anyone just like add themselves into it? What's the process?
Yes. Anyone can access it. Anyone can sign up. It's kind of like a little mini portfolio of sorts. But yeah, it's free to access, easy to get in for any artist across the states who lives and works as a Latinx artist.
Are there other databases like this for other groups? Is this like a common thing in the art world?
You know, I'm sure there is to varying degrees. You know, it's kind of the same idea behind websites like Artsy, I guess, you know, where they kind of bring together different artworks. You know, it's obviously a very different purpose, but kind of the same idea of bringing artworks online and learning through art and artists online. Obviously, they're dealing more with selling works. But yeah, I mean, I think there's different websites like this to varying degree, but I'm not too familiar with them.
How large is the database now? When did you start it?
I started it a little over 3 years ago. We're a small group, mainly because, you know, with my full-time job and my sweet fur baby, Marcel, it's been very busy, so I need to do better with really growing it. But right now we have over 1,700 artists.
Oh, whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah. You know, we need to grow. We need to expand. It's on me.
Well, you can't. You have 1,500. That's a lot to start. So just if each one of them tells one person, then
yes, everyone, please tell everyone about Latinx Art Collective.
Have you made any cool discoveries through it? Have there been any artists that you found through there that you really love?
I have found that this has been very much needed. I have the Instagram Latinx Art Collective, and I had such an influx of DMs from artists just wanting the amplification of their show, of their work. And I think that was the biggest, maybe not surprise, but what impacted me the most, then leading to the website. I don't, you know, asking someone for their favorite artist, I mean, I feel like that's so unfair.
Well, I'm not asking favorite, but like any that you found that you're like, whoa. Because I feel like favorites is hard.
Favorites is hard. No, you know, and I don't even know that I want to like say a name per se. I think everyone, you know, whether you like their work or not, whether you find it impactful or not, I want everyone, I want every Latinx artist's work to be amplified and seen. Regardless of what anyone thinks of it, you know, artists work so hard at their craft. They're so dedicated to something that, you know, is such a hard career to pursue. You know, you're against all odds of success. And so, you know, I wouldn't want to, they're all great. I love them all.
They're like all your children.
They're all my children.
All
Yeah.
your Latinx Art Collective. That's so awesome and cool. It's a lot of work doing that, and then you're also doing your own social media stuff in Guggenheim. How do you prevent social media burnout while doing social media at work and then social media at home?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. I actually just had someone ask me that this past week, you know, like, how do you separate, you know, social media from your personal life? Because my personal social media also is kind of like work in a way, but I don't. And, you know, I got into this field because I love it so much. It's not like a, you know, you clock in, you clock out. I live and breathe art 24/7. It's all I think about, aside from my fur baby. But that's actually really been a big question for me. I've been reflecting on that a lot because of my dog, because I go to work 9 to 5, you know, and I come home and I think about, oh, you know, there's this show to go see after work, or there's this like opening. And the idea of coming home from all day at work where my dog was at home by itself to come take them out, feed them, and leave again, like, I can't do that. I don't like that. And so I spend as much time as I can with her. I try to bring her to gallery openings. And so that has been so important for me to figure out, and I'm still trying to figure it out because it's, you know, it's only fair. She's not going to live forever. I want to give her the best life that I can.
Aw.
My
Yeah,
baby.
if you can bring your baby to a gallery opening, you can bring your dog.
Exactly.
Like,
for babies allowed.
Yeah, bring him in a little carriage or like one of the like baby holders.
I mean, my favorite was there was an opening last winter for Cindy Sherman, and I took her in a little bag, and I have a photo of her. You know, when it was starting to close up and people filtered out, I took her out of my bag, and there's a photo of us, like her on our leash, and there's the Cindy Sherman behind us. I love it.
That's cute. Do you have any favorite? We just said we don't like favorites, but are there any museums that you really love besides the Guggenheim in New York City?
Yes, I absolutely love Whitney Museum. Shout out to Casey, who's the social media manager there. I love the Whitney Museum simply because not just the collection that they have, but all of the work that they are doing, all of the programs, all of the shows. I mean, they're creating such an exciting atmosphere for museums. You know, it's very cool to just have people come in just to hang out. You know, you want museums to be that third space, and they're doing such a great job at it. And their social media is very cool too.
Yeah, I really like their work that they're doing. I saw a video and someone's like, we don't have third spaces anymore. And I was like, there's 180 museums in New York City. What are you saying?
You have experienced them all. You're like, come on, I'm recommending them.
No, there's all these museums. There's like 54 Broadway theaters. I'm like, what third spaces are you looking for? There's the park. There's so many parks.
Yeah.
And then are there any museum exhibitions that you're really loving or ones that you're looking forward to, either at the Guggenheim or in the city at large?
Would it be cheating if I mentioned the Guggenheim?
No, you can talk about Guggenheim.
So we have a show coming up in November called Harmony and Dissonance, Orphism in Paris. And that's going to take up the Rotunda. That's going to be a very exciting show because it's not just paintings of that art movement, but it really combines different elements of what inspired these artists, dance, music. So it's going to be very exciting.
Cool.
Yeah, something for everyone.
Okay. I'll add that to my little list. I'm looking for that. And then the Jenny Holzer one that you have right now. And like the ticker and the Rotunda.
Jenny is an icon.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that that's back. Because that was in the 80s, 90s, that piece?
89. Mm-hmm. It was amazing then and even better now. And, I said before, I love people watching. I love seeing people take in Jenny Holzer. It's such her work is so fascinating. She works in different mediums, not just electronic LED signs. And so I think she's generally advocating for this single message of just kindness, And so seeing people's reception to the exhibition has been fun. Okay, the 89 version had a really long name. So the LED work that's in the Rotunda for the Guggenheim, the title is For the Guggenheim, was made for the Guggenheim. But yeah, I think, the technology from the 80s version has changed. But the message has stayed the same in that it's really just all about awareness of what's around you, what's being fed to you, and really just pursuing a more kind way of thinking about the people around you, society.
And that's running through the end of September, right?
Yes. So the show closes September 29th. Still got some time to see Jenny Holzer. And then Orphism opens in November.
How many months is that one running for?
So Orphism runs through March 9th, 2025.
Okay, so all winter.
Yeah, definitely a lot of time to go see that show.
Yay! So then my last question is, what's something that's been bringing you joy lately?
Marcel, my dog.
Love.
She's my sweetheart. She's my everything. I am so in love with her, and anytime I'm having a bad day, she's just such a bundle of joy. I can't stay upset over silly things.
Oh, that's beautiful. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Where can everyone follow you?
You can follow me at Latina in Museums.
Yay! So make sure you check out Karen, check out the Guggenheim, check out all of the art and things we've talked about, Latinx Art Collective. If you're listening to this, there's a lot for you to research after this.
Yes, please, and thank you.
You can follow me, Jane August, on TikTok and Instagram at Jane August. The next stop is recorded at Brick House in downtown Brooklyn. It premieres on Brooklyn Free Speech Radio and can be found wherever you listen to podcasts.